All right, let's talk about the structure of the introduction paragraph. By this time, you should already have your 3 body paragraphs written. You should have your conclusion mostly written, if not all the way written. And now we're going to talk about the introduction. Now that you know everything that you're writing about, it's a little bit easier to introduce what you're writing about. It's kind of like getting to know someone. If you were introducing someone for the first time, you wouldn't say, "Hi, this is John. John, can you tell me about yourself before I introduce you to my friend Bob?" It wouldn't really make any sense. So you kind of get to know John first a little bit. So now when you introduce him to Bob, you can say, "Hey, Bob, this is my friend John. He likes to go caving. He's a great hunter. He's a fisherman. He just really likes the outdoors." So you see, sometimes it's a little easier to know what you're going to talk about, and then you can introduce it to someone else. So here we go. The first step, the first sentence in your introduction paragraph is called an attention getter or a hook. And in one of your handouts, you should have received a list of different styles of hooks. There's also listed in your book, in lesson 19, some descriptions of hooks as well. So let's go over just a couple. You could ask a question. A question would be, who was the worst villain in children's literature? And then you could go on and describe the White Witch. You could say, who was the evil queen in children's Narnia? Something like that. You could also state a fact and give a statistics. You could say, I don't know, I'd have to find a statistic and tell you one, but maybe something like, in the 1950s, Chronicles of Narnia was the #1 best-selling children's series. Something like that. That would be a statistic. You could give a quote, maybe a particular one from C.S. Lewis, the author, and you'd have to find one to look it up, but you can introduce your essay with a quote from someone. You could do something like a shocking statement. And a shocking statement just gets someone to go like, huh? The example in my particular book says, television is electronic heroin. You could say something about stories wouldn't be stories without the evil villain. It's not the best thing, but that's on the fly. You could have a suspended interest sentence or two. And that one leaves out important information to entice the reader to discover the meaning of what you're writing about. That one might be a little bit harder, but look it up on the information I gave you and see if it makes sense to you. You could also give a command, an imperative. This particular example says, look into the heavens and count the stars if you can. So you could say, read all the children's literature that you can find, and no one will be as villainous as the White Witch of Narnia. Something like that. You could use a fragment. You could say villains everywhere, villains in every book I've read. That's kind of a fragment and short sentences that kind of draw you in. So those are a couple hooks that you want to use. That's a way to kind of grab your reader's attention and say, hey, come read my essay. So be sure to look in the book and sure to look on the handout, and I'll be sure to have them on the website as well. All right, the next sentence is you're going to give some background about the story. So the next sentence should be something like, in the story of in the story of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, written by C.S. Lewis, is the character of the White Witch. I kind of had a brain fart right there in the middle of me talking to you guys about which way to write. But you want to tell me about the origin of the story, like the title, maybe who it's written by. You can write when it was written. I think it was somewhere in the 1950s. You could say mid-1900s. You could say during the time of J.R. Tolkien, who wrote The Lord of the Rings. So something about the origin of that particular story. And you already know a little bit about C.S. Lewis because we wrote about him in prior lessons. So you could always refer back in your book to that. Then the next sentence or two, you want to talk about maybe what kind of story it is. It's a children's fantasy story.